So I can just imagine, my entire childhood. Christy, how are you? Oh, well, I'm sad.
Sad again.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Career Brand Story, a podcast that provides expert career coaching every week. I'm Jeremy Tudor, and on today's show, we're diving deeper into the Enneagram last numbers, 5, 6, and 7. If you missed the other 6 numbers that we covered, you can listen back to the last 2 episodes. We go over them there. 5, 6, and 7 are part of the head triad that respond with knowing and support and the emotion of anxiety. So the Enneagram is a wonderful approach to understanding yourself more and approaching life more wholeheartedly. We're so glad to have Christy, our Chief of Culture and Enneagram Guide here at Cranberry Story. We're rebranding next year. We're going to be doing cranberries and blueberries and
I'm so excited
berries.
about that. I love cranberries.
I'm excited about it too. The logo is coming out well. It's really coming together. Career brand story, and also Jeb Graf, which you'll notice I switched your names around in this episode so that I would force myself not to crack the joke that I usually make with your name.
So, I see. You switched it around as far as order of introduction. Yes.
I did. So it would trick my mind so that I would say your name correctly.
Good job.
Well,
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you. So Jeb Graf, he's commercial photographer and a creative consultant to me and our whole company, and we really appreciate him. Good to have and see both of you back here today. You guys ready for Christmas?
Oh, yeah. My voice is cracking. Yes, I'm ready for Christmas.
I think every parent's voice is cracking.
That's true.
Sure.
So you have Harbor. Is he excited? Do you guys do Santa Claus with him, or what do you do?
He's really excited about Santa and everything and wanting everything and all that. So
is he asking for anything particular?
No. Whenever we have asked him what he would like, he says everything.
That's hilarious. Does he want a skateboard?
He does, but he kind of forgot that he did for this round. So, I'm almost talking too loudly. Sometimes I forget he's just like right on the other side of that door.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not going to give any of that away.
He's got a glass up to the door.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me. He's a smarty.
Now he's going to be like, oh yeah, I remembered.
I want a skateboard.
Yeah, we gave Belle, the Target toy catalog came about a month ago.
Yeah.
So we gave it to her and we gave her a marker. I think she checked marked and circled everything on every page.
Yes.
Yep, that happened.
Yeah. So she's like, oh, I want this and I want that. So,
but then she forgets.
Yeah, she totally forgets. So she's just happy to open stuff.
Well, that's nice. That's the way it should be.
It is.
You can go open that dresser drawer and put your clothes away. If you like,
there's an idea.
Stuff.
That's right. Hey, I've got Christmas gifts for both of you.
Yay!
Oh,
yep. They have come. I've just got to. I've got to wrap them and put a nice little card with it. So.
Well, that sounds nice.
Yep, I'm excited about them. I'm actually super excited about them. So
that's fun.
Jessica, Jeremy got me something.
It's a to-do list.
Great. Now I got to get him something.
That's not true. It's all about just the gift of giving.
I know. So, I'm learning to become a more
receiver,
gracious receiver.
just take it.
Yeah. More about me.
Just give. Well, in the spirit of giving, we do want to give to the numbers 5, 6, and 7, and maybe help some people out there understand a little bit more about how they're wired. So, Christy, take it away.
All right. I am so happy to be here. Much thanks goes to my Enneagram teacher, Hunter Mobley, and the work of Susie Stabile, Ian Cron, Casey Berghoff, and Melanie Bell, whose work has been so insightful and helpful. All of their work has been very foundational for these episodes. As we go through the Enneagram numbers, I would like you to remember that there is beauty and value in each number. Each number has its own unique way of seeing and responding to the world and its own set of strengths and challenges. There is no bad or less desirable number. Remember, as you discover your number, to focus on your underlying motivations and not just a stereotype or behaviors. The person who will discern your number best is yourself and not your friends or family. It is important that you practice self-compassion and non-judgmental self-awareness as we go through the Enneagram numbers. As humans, it's easy for us to zero in on the negative aspects and dismiss the positive strengths. I hope that in learning the Enneagram, that it will foster growth, balance, and a compassion for yourself and others. A few of the vocabulary words I just wanted to remind you of. We have 9 core numbers. So each person has one core number, and that doesn't change throughout life. There are 2 possible wings for everyone's core number. The wing of your number is a number on either side of your core number. Wings may influence or color the expression of your number. You may resonate strongly with one particular wing, or you may drift back and forth between the two, depending on context and even season of life. Your core motivation will be that of your core number and not from your wing.
Jeb and I, when he was here, ate wings together, and we got 2 different wings. We got buffalo, and we got Cajun. What did you get? Dry rub.
This is Cajun dry rub. Yeah, it was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's not the wings you're talking about, though.
No. All right. So a couple more key terms in the Enneagram world. The 9 Enneagram types can also be divided into groups called stances. These stances describe how Enneagram types similarly respond to society. Stances can be helpful to narrow in on your number. So if you go through all of these numbers and still have trouble deciding, between several of them, this can be a great way to kind of narrow in. So Enneagram numbers 3, 7, and 8 move independently or against others. And this stance is referred to as the aggressive or independent stance. Enneagram numbers 1, 2, and 6 move toward others and are referred to as the dependent or compliant stance. And Enneagram numbers 4, 5, and 9 are those who move away or withdraw from others and are referred to as the withdrawing stance. Then there's one more grouping that I wanted to point out, and this is the dominant intelligence center. So we all, as we live through life, use all of our intelligence centers. We use our head, our body, and our heart. But each group responds first through one of these intelligence centers. It's more dominant. So the body or gut or anger triad are numbers 8, 9, and 1. And that was our first, our second episode. And then the heart, feeling, shame triad, numbers 2, 3, and 4. And we went over that last time. And then we have our head anxiety triad, numbers 5, 6, and 7 for today.
I'm excited to talk about these. I've mistyped as 6, so I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
All right. So today we're talking about the head or thinking triad, numbers 5, 6, and 7. So we're going to go back to the idea of a party that I introduced in the last episode.
I like parties.
Yes. So we'll meet 3 more party goers today. Our first party goer is the 5. The 5 came in and has gravitated naturally toward the bookcase. A copy of the Brothers Karamazov has caught his eye. Before long, he has engaged in an in-depth conversation on the power of habit, a favorite topic of his. At some point, you may look around for our 5 friend and realize he quietly left a while back. He has a knack for keeping a low profile. His social style is practical and intentional, withdrawing and heading home when he needs to recharge. The second party goer we meet is the 6. She is in the living room laughing with the group. Warm, relatable, connecting with the people in the room. She suggests a cooperative group game. She loves being a part of a team. She's cheering everyone on and has helped her team come up with a witty team name. If you're paying attention, you might also notice that she quietly moved a candle on the mantle farther back because she noticed that it was a little bit too close to the edge. She is a natural troubleshooter. We find her later talking to a few friends about a new job she's considering. She's interested in their opinions as she weighs her decision. The last party goer we meet is the 7. We meet the 7 at the front door with a big grin. He naturally seems to radiate sunshine. Everyone notices when he walks in the door, and whether he says it or not, his presence says, let's get this party started. He drops by the table to try some of everything. Before long, he's headed to the backyard, initiating a game of limbo, making everyone laugh. Our 7 friend has managed to say hi to just about everybody. Warm, friendly, energetic, and high-fiving. After a few hours, you might notice him with his phone in his hand headed out, saying his goodbyes. It turns out he's meeting up with a few friends at the movies.
Okay, so just in that illustration alone, it's brought up so many questions because I get why the 5 is in the thinking triad, because I have friends that are in that category. I have family members in that category. Makes total sense. But in your illustration, the 6 and 7s, and as I think about them and know about them, I don't understand why they're in the thinking triad.
And that is very common. So as we continue to go through the numbers, I think you'll continue to see what he means by that. The 5 is the investigator, and they love information. So that really is an easy one for them to be in the head triad. But as we go through the other 2 numbers, when we meet the 6, we'll talk about it later, but they are a very warm feeling. I would hope that we all have warmth and feeling, but when you know a 6, they are just, they're very deep feelers. So I texted back and forth with the 6 friend because I wanted to run a few ideas by her about the episode today. And she said that at first everybody thought that she would be in the feeling triad because she's such a deep feeler, but it turns out she is in fact in the thinking triad. And we'll talk about why.
Okay. So what's it feel like to be a 5?
Okay. So, and I did run this because we don't have any of these numbers represented. I reached out to a few friends just to kind of have them, weigh in on a few things. All right. So what it may feel like to be a 5. I need time alone. Independence and times of solitude are not just a preference, but a necessity. I think thoughts are more reliable than feelings. I need time to process things, especially how I feel about things. It takes a lot for me to discuss feelings and be vulnerable. I tend to avoid talking about feelings. I trust myself. I think through things for a while and then make my own decision. I don't always say things out loud, but in my head, I can be somewhat sarcastic and a little cynical. I start each day fresh with a measured amount of energy. I'm conscious of how much energy things will take, and I'm careful not to waste it so that I don't run out before the end of the day. I don't like to feel unprepared or uninformed, especially around other people. I am mindful of resources and do not like wastefulness. I am cautious in sharing my resources with others, whether time, energy, material possessions, or affection. I am a good listener and a good confidant. I value privacy. I can be a bit of a mystery. I keep things on a need-to-know basis. I felt invisible as a child. Sometimes I choose to make myself invisible as an adult. Being self-sufficient is very important to me. It is hard for me to rely on others or to ask for help. I can get stuck in research mode and sometimes have trouble moving into action. I am not materialistic. I prefer simplicity and even minimalism. All right. So, and what's interesting is if you notice the way we have grouped everything, we've gone with it, the dominant intelligence center. So we started out in the first grouping with the body triad, 8, 9, and 1. And then we followed it with the heart triad, 2, 3, and 4. And then the last grouping is the head triad, 5, 6, and 7. But if you notice within this triad, we have each of the stances represented. So the first one, the 5, the investigator, is the withdrawing stance. Their core motivation is to be capable and competent. They are in search of masterful knowledge. Their core fear is to be useless, helpless, and incompetent. Also to be to find that they've run out of resources. Their talk style is explanation. So going through a few of the traits and behaviors of a 5, we start with a healthy 5, what a healthy 5 looks like. And we've talked about this before, that when you talk about the healthy versions of all of the types, you start to notice some common themes. And what you notice is that we each have, our unique things, about each type. that are across the board. But then you also start to notice elements of balance and where self-care has kind of come into play. So it's really balanced each person's type a lot. So a healthy 5 is innovative, inventive. They delight in discovery and learning. They can be highly original and insightful, open-minded. They have their deep understanding breeds compassion for others. They can be objective. They have learned to balance participation and observation. Type 5s typically are very good at observing, and it's very natural for them to hang back. And there is a quality that's been remarked on that's very typical of 5s, is they have the ability to be kind of invisible. And sometimes they lean into that because it allows them to just be an objective observer. But in a healthy space, they've learned to balance the observation with participation. They engage with others comfortably. They are able to display true neutrality. They have in-depth knowledge in usually several areas. They willingly share their findings with others. They experience abundance and see themselves as part of the whole. And they are naturally contemplative. In the average space, and remember that when we talk about healthy, average, and unhealthy, this is not a negative situation. This is a very human, natural situation for each type that throughout the day and throughout our life, we have a natural ebb and flow in our personality. So no person is going to find themselves in a healthy space at all times, depending on stress, depending on what's going on in your life. And even throughout the day, you may fluctuate and you may have some healthy habits. You may go into the average space or sometimes even into the unhealthy space. So that's just a good awareness. And so in the average space, the 5 is studious, curious, but with a narrower scope. They can be highly focused and sometimes hyper-focused. They have trouble putting their ideas into action sometimes. They can become detached and withdrawing, and this can lead to isolation. They may sink into scarcity mindset because they are so aware of resources and really are cautious with their resource management. Sometimes sinking into the scarcity mindset, they really become more and more cautious with their resources. They are more at home observing than participating. Thinking starts to substitute for feelings. They are very self-reliant, carefully measuring resources. They struggle with feeling incompetent and incapable deep down. And they can become aloof, and sometimes take on some intellectual arrogance, being emotionally distant and compartmentalizing. In the unhealthy space, we see the isolation again and becoming severely independent, defensive, preoccupied with security, judgmental, cynical, sarcastic, withholding, paranoid, mentally agitated, stubborn, bullheaded, and controlling. And I always hate ending on the unhealthy because I know that is intense and that, those are a lot of negative descriptors. But that's just a reminder to kind of keep in mind just the entire scope. Any questions?
No, I'm just thinking.
Okay.
No, I agree with
right.
you. It's tough listing it at the end there because it burns.
Yeah. And, and like I've mentioned before with every number, no number is immune. No number goes unscathed. So,
well, the thing I would say here is the last episode that came out, which had my number in it and Jeb's number in it. And I re-listened to it. I re-listened to all of our podcasts for a variety of reasons, not just to hear me speak, but for technical and all that. So I sounded like a true egomaniac number 8 when I'm saying this, but and listening to it, sometimes you do these podcasts and you walk away and you're like, what did we just talk about? And so it's good to kind of re-listen to it. And I listened to it and I came into the house and I told Christy, I was like, oh, I learned some things from our episode. Because like I'm a 8-wing 7 and but I started to recognize like I hadn't really ever studied or thought much about the 9 side of that number that I could lean into and those healthy things. And in all honestly, I always think of 9s. I'm like, gosh, they're kind of lazy. That's what I think. And then, and I did say this, Jeb, I said to Christy, I was like, but Jeb's my best friend and I think he's great. Right.
Right.
And I don't think that at all about you. So, and we think that you're not supposed to type your kids and stuff, but we have thoughts that maybe one of our children might lean more into that 9 number. And I was telling her that it kind of gave me hope in realizing some of the healthy things in there. And, not to just, even when you hear these, my point being, when you hear these, I think all the numbers, regardless of what your number is, I think we just zero in on the negative stuff. And so it was nice to listen to it and realize, oh no, there's healthy things over here and things that I can learn and lean into as well.
Absolutely. It is a very vulnerable experience to hear your number. And that's across the board, regardless of, what, whether you're in the head triad or the body triad or the heart triad. It is just a very personal thing. And to hear descriptors that, hit close to home. But I think that we have to actively work to hold ourselves, as my teacher, Hunter Mobley, says, to hold ourselves lightly with kind of gentle hands. And
the self-compassion.
Yes, it's that self-compassion and to also actively work to not zero in on the negative, but to maybe even highlight some of these excellent qualities.
So what are the 2 wings of the 5?
Okay, so the 2 wings of the 5, we have the 5-wing 4, and the 5-wing 4 is called the Iconoclast.
Cool.
Yeah, and so they take on, and it's an interesting combination because you have the head, the person from the head triad, who is the thinker, but takes the influence of the 4, who is the feeler. And so that kind of influences them with some creativity. They can be more sensitive and empathetic, but sometimes a little bit more self-absorbed, very aware of what's going on inside. They can be independent, sometimes eccentric, more likely to experience melancholy, but also be less emotionally guarded. The 5-wing 6 is the problem solver. They take on the influence of the 6, who is the loyalist. And sometimes they can be a bit more anxious. Fear plays a bigger role with the 6 influence. They can be cautious, maybe a little bit more skeptical, but also more social and loyal. They will question authority and the status quo. More relational. They want to form alliances or find a place in their community. They can at times be socially awkward or remain skeptical of others. So I did want to throw out, as we think about the investigator, the 5, that a lot can be said of, the withdrawing numbers, with, being very careful of their resources, and that applies to everything. Everything is a resource, whether it's the time, the energy that it's taking, a conversation. So to really notice when a 5 has chosen to spend time with you or to have a conversation, because they don't do that lightly. And when you are in a relationship with a 5, to also notice that their preference for independence and solitude isn't just a preference, but it's a necessity. And so it's the way that they recharge. So they have to have that time, that downtime. So if you ever are inviting them to a party and they decide, no, I really need to stay home, we can honor that. Or if they have to head home early, that's an important part of self-care. A few famous 5s. We have Buddha, Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking, Emily Dickinson. We've got John Paul Sartre, Stephen King, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Tom York. I thought this was a really fun list because it kind of is, all over the place. We've got Trent Reznor, Jane Goodall, Kurt Cobain, Tim Burton, Annie Leibovitz, Salvador Dali, Alfred Hitchcock, Eckhart Tolle, Jodie Foster, and Georgia O'Keeffe.
Okay, so geniuses.
Yeah, so pretty
just
much.
Like the most brilliant people to ever have walked the earth. That's all.
And it was really fun to see, like, for me, at least, I enjoyed seeing all of the creatives in there because we've got the Investigator. That's, I don't know. I guess I would expect to see just like a bunch of scientists, and just all intellectuals. But, it's kind of fun to see the way that they've used that energy, into the, creative sphere. So,
yeah, I mean, so even the entertainers that are in here are like, when I think about Tom York, I don't think about your run of the mill pop star. He's like the most intimidatingly smart front man I've ever experienced. Of course, I'm a big Radiohead fan, so I'm going to lean that way, but
yeah,
it's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what's some growth points for a 5?
Okay, so the growth points for each of us, basically it's the idea of stretching. Is stretching into the spheres that maybe aren't natural for us. And so you'll want to think about your dominant intelligence center. So for the 5, it's the head. And so you'll want to stretch into the opposite area, your weakest area. And so first they're going to use their head center and then maybe go into their body for action. But the last is usually the heart. So you'll want to intentionally take some time to lean into your heart center. Maybe examine what are a few feelings you're feeling today. A 5 friend of mine mentioned making a list of possible emotions. And she found it helpful to keep those nearby as a reminder for self and social awareness. You can also consider, how can you adopt a mindset of abundance? In her book, Daring Greatly, Brené Brown talks about scarcity and abundance. She also offers great insight on vulnerability in relationships. How might the idea of abundance contribute to your relationships? Another idea is to call a friend and meet up for no other reason than to hang out.
I like that one.
Yeah. And then lastly, lean into your body center. What is something you've been putting off? Tackle one thing off of that list. Try yoga or some type of exercise to move your energy from your head into your body.
So let's talk about the 6s.
Okay. So the second party goer is the Enneagram 6, the Loyalist.
So Jeb, this is the one that you commonly might have thought you might have fallen into.
Yeah, and I think even when I've done one of the online tests, it's where I've landed a few times.
Okay. And also, I might be making this up, but is it not true that there are more 6s than any of the other numbers?
Yes, I've heard that before.
So what's interesting about that is in DISC, which is strictly just behaviors and how you do things, we look at 4 behavioral factors. And the steadiness behavioral factor, there is more of those behaviors than there are any of the other behaviors.
Okay.
So I've wondered how many people have that behavior and would be 6s. I don't know that they correlate or cross over or not, but I'm curious about that.
I'm a high S in DISC.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a high SC, but higher S than C.
Yeah.
And I totally understand why I type as a 6. Like without even thinking in the Enneagram nomenclature about, unhealthy 9s showing 6 tendencies or whatever. I totally see it just by the name, the Loyalist. I'm loyal to a fault.
That is true. Absolutely. Keep being loyal.
Yeah. And actually, I have notes in my, The Road Back to You with people's names and question marks. as I was first learning some of the types and, who I knew in my life that might be that type. And I have your name by 6, like Jeb ?
And permanent marker.
No, I was like, yeah, it just seemed like the loyalist, definitely. And then I also thought of our friend Robin, who was actually also a 9. But I thought that she might be a 6.
But in a reminder, the key is it's not because we grab onto those words and we can grab onto list. But at the end of the day, it's the motivations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I do want to kind of throw out there as we're going through these lists, it's a snapshot. It's, a little bit of a stereotypical key traits that you might see. But yeah, you kind of want to consider the snapshot as a whole, but then really zero in on kind of those underlying motivations. I also want to mention that 6s are one number that have some of the hardest time pinning down their number. So if you're having a hard time deciding what number you are, you may kind of put a question mark by a 6. All right. So what it feels like to be a 6. I had my friend Lily weigh in on this list. Number 1, I am a planner. I keep in mind worst case scenarios and possibilities and try to plan for the best outcome. I'm an excellent troubleshooter. I'm a people person. I gravitate toward people and they gravitate towards me. I support my people and look for support from my people. I am a team player and value community. I am very loyal to my friends, my group, my cause, or my team. I don't feel the need to be in charge. I am skeptical of leadership. I vet leaders to make sure that they deserve my loyalty. And if they do, I will give them my utmost support. If they are bad leaders or abuse their authority, I will rise up against them. I tend to know pretty quickly whether I trust someone or not. If I make a snap judgment, it can be pretty hard to overcome. I have more anxiety and fear of things going wrong than most of my friends. Sometimes I go from worry and anxiety to shutting it out in times of stress. I've been told that I am warm, understanding, loyal, funny, and compassionate. I'm not really comfortable with extremes, and that includes people. People who are always on can be overwhelming. I don't really like unpredictability. It is almost impossible for me to be certain I've made the right decision. I tend to run decisions by trusted people. Fear and anxiety help me to choose which path I don't want to take. When relationships are going well, I worry that something will happen to ruin it. Order and predictability are comforting for me. Change can be hard for me. I am skeptical of new things and the unknown. I love encouragement and affirmation, but I don't always know what to do with compliments. So I think for you, Jeb, it would be interesting to know, like, between the two lists, do you find yourself checking off some of these, but not all of them?
Yeah. And I find myself checking off a lot of them, but like the version of myself from, 4 or 5 years ago. Not so much now after I've done a lot of work on myself, my emotional and mental health. So, yeah.
Okay. So if
in fact,
someone's kind of new to the Enneagram, the numbers 6 and 9 are closely related. If you notice the symbol, they're actually connected. So 3, 6, and 9 are connected. And it said that 3s, 6s, and 9s can struggle to pin down their number. And at times they can kind of gravitate to a couple of these numbers and wonder, okay, well, am I a 6 or am I a 9? That's very common. And so one way that can be really helpful is to, as I mentioned before, to zero in on the stances. That can be kind of clarifying, because there are going to be some attributes that you may take on, like take Jeb, for instance. He's a 9, but he has, plenty of these things that he takes on from the 6 because he's connected to them. But your ultimate motivation is that of a 9, right?
Yes.
Yes. And then also your stance. So the stance in this case of the 6s is dependent. So they're very people dependent, whereas the stance of the 9 is withdrawing. So that can be really clarifying. So if you notice that you're withdrawing, that's your go-to, and that's, kind of what we've considered even for our kid, which, we haven't, voiced that or anything, but we've wondered, is that child is a very withdrawing stance, which would be different than the 6, which is dependent. And if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That kind of gets confusing. Okay, so the motivation for 6s is to have security and support. The core fear is of being without support or guidance. The talk style is questioning and troubleshooting. So a healthy 6 has learned to trust others, but they've also learned to trust themselves. They are committed, stable, productive, logical thinkers, team players that cultivate teamwork. They're loyal, honest, reliable, clear-eyed judges of character. They're dedicated allies, collaborative, courageous, tenacious, determined, engaging, warm, likable, funny, and relatable, steady, sharp, and analytically minded. The average 6 is questioning. They worry a lot. They imagine worst case scenario planning, overly focused on authority as kind of a sense of security. They can either be subservient to authority or rebellious to it. They can be anxious and codependent, looking to others and other structures for stability and safety. They look for external guidance and security. They can at times become overcommitted and overextended, testing systems and relationships just to figure out if they can trust what's around them. Then they can become reactive and ambivalent and pushable in relationships. They are also quick-witted, charming, and a devil's advocate. In an unhealthy space, anxiety gives way to paranoia. And insecurity rises. They have a hard time trusting themselves, increased codependence and projecting. They become suspicious and defensive, blaming, volatile, fearful, distraught, and erratic. All right, so we'll take a deep breath and we'll breathe out all of that negativity. We're just going to expel it. All right. So a good quote that I found from Ian Cron and Suzanne Stabdiel's book, The Road Back to You. It says, though they are typically wary and skeptical of people at first, once you've won 6's trust, they're with you for life. 6s want to feel connected to the people they love. These are the mothers who call every day to check in, wanting to know what you're doing and that you're safe. 6s have a remarkable ability to bond us together. They believe in the importance of family, home, raising responsible children, and marriage, and they make choices based on their values, in part because they have very high security needs. The 6 wings play a heavy influence. It's a very different feel. So we have the 6-wing 5 called the Defender. And the 6 takes on the Investigator's influence. They're more introverted, intellectual, cautious, and self-controlled. They can be private and solitary, but can get trapped into overthinking, and that can get into analysis paralysis. The 6-wing 7 is also known as the Buddy, taking on the playfulness and sunniness of the 7, entertaining, charming, animated, adventurous, a little more willing to risk, but still having a backup plan on adventures, willing to self-sacrifice for loved ones. There are also a couple of other descriptive things to know about 6s. Authority plays a big role in the way that 6s approach the world and finding security. So there are 2, as my teacher, Hunter Mobley, says, $40 words. So there's phobic and counterphobic. And I'm going to read a quote from The Road Back to You that explains phobic and counterphobic 6s. So there are 2, and this is from Ian Cron and Suzanne Stabile. There are 2 kinds of 6s, each of whom manages fear, their need for security, and their relationship to authority differently. One 6 is very loyal and gives their full attention to authority because they think that's where security lies. Always loyal to authority, these 6s seek to please and obey the rules. They are deferential to their bosses, trying best to please because they view the authority as the source of their security, We call these phobic sixes. There's another kind of six who also focuses on authority, only they are not as nearly as agreeable or compliant. These folks are wary of authority figures. They keep a weather eye on those in charge in case they try to pull the wool over someone's eyes or pull a fast one. Called counterphobic sixes, these folks will strike if they smell a rat. They seek security not by avoiding or placating a perceived threat, but by deliberately provoking and attacking it. Their security comes from conquering the source of their fear, not capitulating to it. In reality, most sixes are a mixture of phobic and counterphobic, which reflects their vacillating, doubting temperament. The phobic sixes fall back and flee, while the counterphobic sixes try to conquer or defeat whatever their fears are. So I think that can also offer a little bit of insight into whether you may or may not be a six.
So who are some famous sixes then?
So we have Mark Twain, Sigmund Freud, Robert F. Kennedy, Malcolm X, George H.W. Bush, Princess Diana, which is interesting because we watched that show and she really seemed like a 4 to me, but this says she's a 6. We have Prince Harry, J.R.R. Tolkien, Bruce Springsteen, U2's Bono, Melissa Etheridge, Eminem, which I found that interesting that he's a 6, Michael Moore, Marilyn Monroe, Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, Mark Wahlberg, Woody Allen, Paul Rudd, Sarah Jessica Parker, Ben Affleck, Hugh Laurie, Katie Holmes, David Letterman, Jay Leno, Ellen DeGeneres, Andy Rooney, Katie Couric, and Chris Rock.
Hey, I've met Katie Couric before. She waved to me. Going back to Princess Diana, though, again, if you look at the motivators, and I mean, I didn't know obviously her personally, but I mean, she seemed to be looking for security in her whole life. When you not watching The Crown, everybody, but watching actual documentaries and listening to her live interviews.
Wait, what?
I'm not sure.
The Crown isn't
right. I don't know that The Crown is 100% accurate, but thinking about in her live interviewing and stuff, it seemed that she was looking for security, and she certainly did not get that in the family she married into, and it probably played into her phobia. So,
okay.
I don't know.
I can see how that could be the case.
Just call me an expert.
Well, and I mean, in the show, they're going to play up, the drama, which, I think that's the part that made me think of 4 is all the crying and,
right,
all of that. But, okay. I did want to throw out just a couple of insights from Lily of what helped her realize that she was an Enneagram 6. She says, hearing about the contradictory nature of sixes helped her more than anything. She checked out EnneagramInstitute.com that had extra info on that. She says, it is in our nature to be unsure of everything and fearful of picking wrong. This makes it so easy to mistype ourselves. She's had so many people think that she's a 1, 2, 3, or 7. That it took her a really long time. And it was kind of fun because when we moved to where we live, we lived basically for a year as her neighbor. And I was kind of learning the Enneagram along with her. And we had quite a few fun conversations. So I know that it took a while for her to kind of narrow in on her number. She says codependency is key, not necessarily codependency on one person, but feeling like she wouldn't be anywhere without a safety net and a support system. She never thought she would be in the head triad. Anyone who heard about head, heart, or gut thought instantly that she would be in the heart triad. So that threw her off for a really long time. But if you kind of go back to some of the things that we know about sixes and have learned about sixes, that yes, they're very deeply feeling people, but they are very analytically minded. They have the strong ability to consider possibilities and to troubleshoot. So we kind of see that in action. And something that we aren't talking about in this introductory series is stress and security moves. And so we might at some point come back to this later on in a different podcast and talk about those stress and security moves and talk about how these numbers are connected, like 3, 6, and 9, and how knowing that can kind of be insightful in learning what your number is. So growth points for sixes. You're naturally in your thinking triad. So you can intentionally lean into your heart center. Try journaling your feelings. Are you wrestling with anything right now? What positive, secure feelings can you embrace in the different arenas of your life? Close relationships, work, and home life. You can also consider some of the choices that you've made and notice when they've had a positive outcome. Contemplative or mindfulness practices can be very helpful for sixes to find stillness and pause from unproductive thinking. The quiet is very beneficial for finding stillness, peace, mental calm, and clarity, allowing you to center yourself. You can lean into your body center, allowing your energy to flow from your head into your body. Use that energy to get things done and move forward in an area you've been putting off because of uncertainty. What is one area you can release the idea of certainty and embrace your inner guidance? Imagine that you are the voice of a mentor. What would you advise yourself? Allow that to be enough.
Are you looking for some custom creativity to incorporate into your spaces? Whether you need some inspirational art for your home, office, wedding, or event invitations, look no further than Lauren Phoenix Design. Lauren Phoenix is an Atlanta-based visual artist and illustrator. Lauren sells prints and digital downloads of all kinds, including a whole series on the Enneagram. In addition to illustrations, Lauren Phoenix also offers custom jackets, branding, t-shirt designs, tattoo designs, and more. Her inspiring work can be found online at laurenphoenixdesign.com.
All right. So what it feels like to be a 7. Would you like me to do this list? Because I am a wing 7.
Yeah, you can do this list. So it's the last party goer.
All right. So what it feels like to be a 7. I am an incurable optimist. I actually relate to that. I love seeing the bright side of life. I usually try to help others and see the upside. I think people worry way too much. My motto is YOLO, you only live once. Life is one great adventure. I don't want to miss out. In fact, I have FOMO, fear of missing out. I'm spontaneous and adventurous. I love trying new things. I love to anticipate all of the good things in life, food, trips, fun outings, fun times with people. I think a lot about how great it's going to be, and I love planning for the future fun things. I feel like I should be reading this with like really fun voice. I get bored with the same old thing. I need to keep things fresh. I have a lot of friends, and I make new friends easily. I seem popular, and I'm sure of myself, but have plenty of doubts. I bring the fun and entertainment. Most of the time I love to, but sometimes I feel like that's what people always expect from me. I don't like it when people have expectations of me or try to pin me down. I have a hard time making hard and fast commitment because I like to keep my options open. I tend to avoid heavy conversation and confrontations. In fact, I'll let people break up with me. When things are too heavy or serious, I usually lighten things up and make people laugh. I don't like endings, goodbyes, or things that make me sad. Sorry, I'm starting to chuckle about this because my father-in-law is a 7.
Yes.
And that number 10 about when things get heavy or serious. I mean, I've got some good stories of he and I being in some serious situations and being the only two in the room laughing.
Yeah.
Yes, they are a funny pair to watch. But yeah, when I first started learning the Enneagram and I was kind of imagining what some of my family members' numbers were, it was an easy one to guess that he was a 7. So he is a very sunny 7. So the 7s, the enthusiasts, their stance is independent, aggressive stance. Their motivation is freedom and possibility, or to be satisfied and content. Their core fear is of being deprived and in pain. Their talk style is entertaining or storytelling. All right, so a healthy 7 is spontaneous, fun-loving, joyful. They inspire joy, deeply inspired by the wonderfulness of life. They are productive, accomplished. They excel at brainstorming and planning. They're appreciative of life's good things. They make lemonade out of lemons, highly resilient. They've learned that sometimes less is more. have learned to tap into the full range of emotion, not just the happy ones, have stopped avoiding pain and disappointment, but have learned to incorporate it into life. They are spiritually grounded, practical, and have learned to be present and savor the good that's happening now. In an average space, a 7 is adventurous, always seeking new experiences, seeking variety and novelty, but can lose focus. In order to avoid sad feelings and anxiety, they can take on too much, not always finishing what they start. They can become excessive because they're always enjoying the new experiences, and sometimes becoming self-centered and demanding. The feeling of why am I so unfulfilled can lead to cynicism. They can be insensitive if they're not careful. There's a tendency to reframe everything that is sad or limiting. So they become spin doctors and can over-optimize things. Even the sad things, they have a tendency to kind of flip it. So in that, even we can kind of see that that's not always a bad thing. So it's just kind of being aware of that, and none of these things are hard and fast, like, all of this is negative. They find happiness in anticipation, followed with sadness that the expectation is seldom fully met. They entertain to feel safe. They're popular, always jumping to the next thing. In an unhealthy space, there's a tendency to avoid pain at all costs, to run away from responsibilities and commitments. They can become self-pitying or reckless, thrill-seeking, erratic. They can become at risk for addictions, depression, and burnout. So those are all warning signs.
So what are the wings of the 7 then?
So the 7-wing 6 is the entertainer. They're lighter, whimsical. They have a whimsical vibe. They can be charming, connect easily with others. They gravitate towards mystical ideas like synchronicity. They're fueled by the conscientiousness of sixes. So they are able to give projects and people more time before moving on. The 6 influence adds more sensitivity, but anxiety too. They are dutiful, loyal, accepting, funny, and entertaining. The 7-wing 8, the realist, has double independent, aggressive energy. They are an interesting combination because they're one of the most energetic combinations. The 7-wing 8 and the 8-wing 7 are the most energetic combinations. They're more pragmatic. They hustle to get things done. Straightforward, ambitious, competitive, bold, aggressive, persuasive, assertive, usually getting their way. Playful, having a good time is still more important than gaining power, but can get bored easily. So even in this, you can see how the wing influences your core number, but you don't take on the motivation. So where an 8-wing 7 takes on the sunniness of 7, there's kind of more of that drive to lead and have impact. So there's very similar energy, but the 7-wing 8 cares more about having a good time and doesn't really care so much about who takes the lead, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
All right. So a quote about 7s from Ian Cron and Suzanne Stabile. 7s embody joy and a boundless love for life. Most mornings they burst into life like kids who just found out it's a snow day. As is the case with every Enneagram type, what's best about their personality is what's worst about their personality. Their gift is also their curse. Scratch the vibrant paint on the surface of a 7, and what you'll find underneath is the need to avoid pain. 7s don't want to feel unpleasant emotions, particularly that swirl of fear and emptiness they register at their core. No one enjoys feeling frightened, sad, bored, angry, disappointed, or frustrated. But for 7s, emotions like these are intolerable, which was really interesting, like as I processed my dad being a 7, because like I've always known him to be, sunny, and he's always been the type of person that's like, yeah, but the upside. And I really kind of had to chuckle because he has a daughter who's a 4.
Oh, man.
And so I can just imagine, my entire childhood. Christy, how are you? Oh, well, I'm sad.
Sad again.
I mean, there's so many situations where my dad's been like, yeah, but, or, talking about the upside or he's just plain out said, well, don't be. So that's fun. All right. So a few famous sevens. We have Mozart, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Amelia Earhart, Joe Biden, Elton John, Mick Jagger, Miley Cyrus, Britney Spears, Katy Perry, Russell Brand, Sacha Baron Cohen, Steven Spielberg, Fred Astaire, Cary Grant, John Belushi, Joan Rivers, Bette Midler, Goldie Hawn, George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, Mike Myers, Bruce Willis, Robert Downey Jr., James Franco, Leonardo DiCaprio, Charlie Sheen, Cameron Diaz, Paris Hilton, Larry King, Howard Stern, and Simon Cowell.
I don't see how Simon Cowell made the 7 list.
Yeah, I really paused at that one because I thought, aren't we sure that he's not an 8?
I can see him as an 8-7. Maybe they got that one confused.
I kind of had a question mark by that one. Yeah.
Do you think it's?
But hey, you don't know his motivators.
We don't know.
Right.
Well, also, I think we see what's portrayed for like American TV.
Mm-hmm.
It's like how Gordon Ramsay is known to be a big sweetheart, but on American TV, he has to play the big jerk because that's what
it's very
people
sensationalized.
Want.
Yeah. So what are some growth points for 7?
All right. So growth points for 7. So again, the 7 is coming from the head triad. And, with them being in the head triad, you can see how they use a lot of their thought for thinking ahead, for planning things, for imagining what something's going to be like, or what would they like to do next. So I encourage you to lean into your heart center. Are there any negative or sad feelings you have been holding? A good motto from the famous therapist Tiffany Rowe is feel, deal, heal. Take some time to address some of these feelings. Journaling is a great way to explore this. Can you make it fun? Find a fun journal or get creative as you journal. How might this positively influence your life, relationships, and work? 2, give yourself a pat on the back or a gold star when you allow yourself to feel negative feelings like anxiety, sadness, frustration, disappointment without avoiding them. That's great progress and important to your overall wholeness. 3, try a mindfulness practice that allows you to sit quietly with the present. Even just a few minutes a day can offer your busy mind and active body a chance to recenter and recalibrate. What do those times of quiet and stillness show you? And 4, how can you be more present in the moment instead of always anticipating what is ahead? Food for thought. Set your phone down when you're with others, or maybe leave it in the car. Make a conscious decision to savor the moment and the person that you're with. Allow it to be enough.
Ooh, that's a lot.
So I did have just a couple of closing thoughts that I wanted to share because it really is a lot. But like I mentioned before, if you're continuing to narrow in on your number, and maybe even if you get stuck on that, that sounds like me, but even that motivation, I don't really understand how that's my motivation. You might want to pick up a couple of these books that I've mentioned, the primers, either The Road Back to You by Ian Cron and Susie Ann Stabile. That's a faith perspective. Or we have The Modern Enneagram by Casey Burghoff and Melanie Bell. And then there's also the EnneagramInstitute.com that has a wealth of information. And sometimes it just takes hearing the motivation in slightly different words that kind of helps things click for you. I also wanted to read a quote.
Can I jump in real quick?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I think that there's one other way that people can get guidance on the Enneagram that would be really valuable to them, is that they could reach out to you as an Enneagram guide.
Good idea.
Yeah. So you can actually email her at Christie, Christie, at careerbrandstory.com. If you have questions on any of these episodes or comments or thoughts, she would love to hear from you. So that's Christie, Christie, at careerbrandstory.com.
Yes, and I love talking about the Enneagram. So, I would love to hear your questions. I would love to help you find your number or your next step in your path. So here's a quote from the Modern Enneagram. As you learn about your type, look out for your desires and motivations that you've been discounting in yourself. For example, are you a people person working in a field with little interpersonal interaction? Do you want more power or visibility, but hold yourself back from pursuing these things in a satisfying way? Due to various forms of cultural conditioning, many of us write off important parts of ourselves because they're inappropriate, undesirable, too much this or not enough that. When we do this, we deny our gifts that we bring into the world. We can only bring balance into our lives if we accept the people we are in the first place and make choices that fit our personality's needs.
Well, this has been really insightful. I've thoroughly enjoyed doing like all of these episodes with you and having you be a part of this. And we've gotten a lot of people have made comments and have been listening to these. So I think they've been super helpful to everybody.
Yeah.
So
and
thank you.
Christy, you have a great voice for this.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I will tell you that she's going to be a regular, right?
That's good.
But we are looking forward to her launching her personal brand in 2021. And, I've already suggested, I think someone is a podcast star. She's doing their own podcast.
Well, I really appreciate all the encouragement. It has been out of my comfort zone, but I've got a good coach, so I really appreciate that.
Well, and I mean it because
awesome.
I listen to these podcasts a lot of times before they even get published. And then, because I'm editing them. And then once they get published, I listen to them again, like Jeremy said, like when we're recording, I'm listening for recording things. When we're editing, I'm looking for editing things. And then I finally get to listen to it as a podcast. As a person with misophonia and somewhat sensitive to certain sounds, I appreciate that you have a voice that's easy to listen to.
I wouldn't even think about that. Oh my goodness. Well, I appreciate that.
And then there's me.
Stinking Jeremy.
Hey, so we want to say congratulations to Taylor Martin, who won our giveaway on Instagram. He received the Enneagram prints designed by artist Lauren Phoenix. We love collaborating with Lauren, and in fact, she did as well. And so hopefully we'll look for I think we should get her on the podcast. I don't know if she'll do it, but we'd love to maybe have her on sometime and talk about her artwork that she did around the Enneagram. Truly incredible pieces. I actually bought all 9 of her prints for Christie's office here in our offices. And so they're just beautiful prints. The power to remind you of your strengths and the beauty of your personality type. We actually didn't show them.
No, I forgot.
No. So, well, that means you just got to go to laurenphoenixdesign.com and you can see the 5, 6, and 7 prints that she did there. And if you want, you can also follow her on Instagram. She's at Lauren Phoenix Design. And again, just does some great things.
How long have you been in Tennessee, Jeremy?
Say that again?
How long have you been living in Tennessee now?
2 years.
You just said follow her.
Well,
follow her.
It was bound to happen.
Follow her.
Follow her down.
Follow her. Yeah.
Follow
I'm just
her,
taking it.
Follow her to the holler.
We're acclimating really well.
Just taking it all in.
Well, that's good.
Making sure I have a good Tennessee Christmas. So this is this is our last episode for 2020.
Oh.
So we did 22 episodes. We started back in what? March or April? I think April was when our first podcast came out.
Yeah, I think April was first published, and we did some production meetings in March. But
yeah, and so we've done 22 amazing episodes. And thank you, Jeb, because there's a lot of hard work on the back end of all of that, and you make us look like pros. And I really appreciate that.
You are a pro.
So we're going to take a small break, but we're going to be back with conversations around careers, brands, and stories in the new year. We've already we actually know what we're talking about for all of 2021. And so we're super excited to be delivering that content to you and getting into those conversations. Don't be sad, because on the break, this is a great time. You got a new episode that just came out Well, I guess in the recording of this, it will already be out.
Right.
And then this one will come out, and then go back and listen to your favorite ones and catch up. And then we'll be back in the new year with a lot of fun conversations, and hope that you'll join us in those conversations. We're going to try to provide a lot of different avenues and ways for you to come be part of all these conversations. And you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Just search for Jeremy Tudor. And on Instagram, I'm at Jeremy T. Tudor. And if you want to watch the podcast, which I think is a lot of fun to do, all of these episodes are on YouTube. You can just search Jeremy. Gosh, man. Just search Jeremy Tudor.
Follow
Jeremy. holler over to Jeremy Tudor or the Career Brand Story to find us. This is probably good. This is the last episode of the year, right?
We do need a break.
I've had a little too much eggnog, maybe. Oh, well, Christie, where can everyone find you besides your email address that I gave out?
You can. Yeah, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
And you can also find me on Instagram at starryeyedvie.
All right. And Jeb, where can people find you spreading Christmas cheer for all to hear?
Well, Jeremy, tonight, if you live in Irwin, North Carolina, you can find me outside staring at the sky because we're going to go out and look at the Christmas star, the aligning of the planets, and we're going for a night walk. But to your point, you can find me at jebgraph.com, JEBBGRAFF.com. And I realized that I've been pointing everybody to my Instagram, and I have not posted an Instagram picture in a really long time, which is not good for a professional photographer to be doing. So if you're following me on Instagram, thanks for the follow. I've got a plan to get some updated stuff soon, but I'm pretty active on stories. So anyway, jebgraph.com or at jebgraph on Instagram, and same handle on all the other networks.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening to all of our episodes this year, being a huge support, commenting and liking, and just following us. This is the whole reason we do this, is for you. And so we hope that all of these 22 episodes that we did in 2020, especially in 2020, ended up being inspirational, encouraging, and helped you got through a really hard year. Looking for a bright and wonderful new year in 2021. So until then, we hope that you have happy holidays. Thanks for tuning in, and keep thriving.
If you're interested in advertising your business on our podcast, we advertise for local and national companies. Contact McCay at careerbrandstory.com for more information. That's MCCAY at careerbrandstory.com.